So I'd like to introduce my panel. We have Rosa Kruger, a pioneering viticulturalist who trained also as a political journalist, worked as a political journalist. I think it's fair to say this has informed your perspective of wine and working in wine. Viviana Malafarina, who trained and worked first as a teacher of languages before discovering her talent for viticulture, and you're now the general manager at Basilisco Winery in rugged Basilicata, which is part of the Fiori di San Gregorio group. Derek Mossman Knapp, who was a ski instructor and athlete. I know, it's like, guys, can you just be good at one thing? Before also discovering, well, love and viticulture in Chile, where you now work with old vine Carignan, principally in the Maule with Pilar, your wife. So the labour of the vineyard is the foundation of wine culture, but the craft and knowledge are threatened by a labour shortage caused by rural depopulation, an ageing workforce, and a decline in the take-up of generational workers within great growing families. In the next 40 minutes, we will explore how to cultivate and retain talent in viticulture. And I think that it's important to really pick up on the points of the last session. So we are at the mercy in wine of these huge currents in global trade. We are currently coming into a time of global oversupply in wine. We probably do need to contract vineyard plantings, but the indiscriminate loss of vineyard plantings is, I think, the great risk. If we lose old vineyards, rather than really being intentional about which vineyards we contract, we're losing these centuries of craft. And I think picking up on all the discussions around how we really premiumize and valorize. I love the French word valorize old vines and old vineyards in the market. It's reliant upon highly specialized local know-how of these training systems, these viticultural systems, which come from this very ingenious frugality. You know, they work so well because they had no option but to make them work. And if we go with this loss of these old vineyards, we're actually losing one of our greatest aspects of craft, and craft is so linked to this valorization, to ideas of luxury and transcendence, and not, as someone was saying, bullshit ostentation of luxury, but true luxury, which is the luxury of time, knowledge, craft passed on. So our three speakers are really at the cutting edge of this work, the pruning edge, the tilling or no-till edge. And I'm going to ask you three questions, same three questions to each of you. And we do have, this is a sort of a rotating presentation of photographs that they've each sent me from their vineyards. So these are the people that you work with and work alongside in your vineyards. So first of all, I'd like to ask, each of you works really closely with viticultural teams, and what are the biggest challenges you face with your terroir and with your community when it comes to training and retaining viticultural talent? And I'm going to ask that first to Rosa.
Thank you so much for the question. This is a subject very close to my heart, as you can probably see from the photographs. I think we all, and Dr. Jones mentioned earlier, the word sustainability is becoming a bit fuzzy. So where does sustainability start? Does it start with the vineyards and then the winemaker and then the buyers? Or does it start with the people that actually touch and tend the vines? The people that's been in the vineyards forever. Sometimes in a country like mine, we have people seem to like to buy in South Africa these days. So we have a changing ownership of often of the bigger farms. And the workers are so particular, they will just laugh and say, there comes a new guy, but we've been around here for years. So I really think it is of the utmost importance that we look after these people, the vineyard workers. And I know in different countries it's different. With Viviana, we discussed this previously. She keeps the same people. It's the same family that work with her. With Mrs. Mendoza from Bolivia, it's her family that works in the vineyard. With Isidoro from Barolo, it is the same people that works in it's his own team that prunes the one row and do the shoot positioning and the rest of the viticulture for that year in that one row. I know that it's different in different countries. In my country, it's a huge problem because we come from a culture of mass production. The people used to live on the farms. Now they don't live on the farms anymore. They live in low-cost housing estates in the local towns. And we seem to lose that wonderful, wonderful Cape culture of viticulture. So we've started schools. We started schools to rebuild that culture. And it's a lovely culture. For interest's sake, it was the vineyard workers that showed me to the first old vines I discovered in South Africa. When I started loving old vines, that was many, many years ago, I said to the people, so where are these vineyards? And they would say to me, you go up that mountain, you turn left at that tree, you follow that sign, and there at that gate, you turn left, and of course we all got lost, but that's how I found most of it, because they know. The people that you see in the photographs are people that I work with every day. I know them, they respect me, and that's why we started the schools. There's not a single place in many of the countries, and I've been to many countries. I've been across the world. I've been to Russia, I've been to Japan, I've been to Slovakia, I've been to all your countries. And many of the countries I see seasonal or migrant labor working. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you treat them fairly. And as long as they're part of this sustainability that we're talking about, because it starts with them. You drink the wine, but you're not standing in that vineyard for 8 hours a day, in the sun, in the heat of summer, or when it's really cold and there's snow on the mountains. Those are the people, that's where it starts, it's with them. So we need to take them with us, we need to treat them kindly, we need to pay them properly, and we need to teach them. I don't ask for more money. That's not my place. I would never ask people to pay more money because there's no money in the industry, you know that. But I can ask you to teach them, and we'll address this again. Thank you.
Thank you. And Derek, we heard from Michelle in the previous session about her observations of going to Itata. What's your challenge when it comes to developing what led you actually to set up your VIGNO collective working with old vines in Maule? And what was it you found when you got there and the way that those workers were being paid and were actually being taught about how to work with these old vines?
Our experience has been very, very different than some of the things I hear today, and I understand that there are tremendous differences. I think what happened to us, we were very small in a business that belongs to the big. We were, to be quite honest, happy working in Maipo once, which I find very difficult to believe myself. But we went to Maule because we were shunned for wanting to pick early or wanting to pick too little. We didn't fit in ever, still probably don't. And we went down and we figured we'd find people who were smaller and we could get along with them. But of course what we found was the way labor worked was you were the least important client of the person who could bring contracted people in because you were doing the littlest jobs and you were the most finicky about when you wanted to pick and how do you want to do it. You were the last on the, how do you say, on the totem pole. So in the end, what we had to do is we had to reinvent the thing so that instead of contracting out, we had to have our own people. If we wanted to have our own people, we actually had to have our own van, and that van had to be respectable with the vans of the other people's. And in the end, what we did was we ended up arming up the A-team, and the A-team now gets hired out by other people. But it's been a really interesting trip. I wouldn't recommend it to to anyone. But it's been convincing people to go back, not to go backwards, but to look to the past, because for the previous 15, 20 years before we got there, perhaps more, they were being convinced by scientific people that if they could just produce more kilos, then they could satisfy the bulk people, or if they could just change over to Chardonnay. Never saw that one coming. All of these ideas. And of course, we went back and we said, no, we want to go back the old way, except we're going to use the lens of science. A partner, Alvaro Peña, with my wife and I, always had this idea. And of course, when he realized that there was a hectare and a half here and a hectare and a half there, and then this over here, and there was these varieties present, for someone who works in a laboratory, that was wonderful. As long as you made 3 repetitions, as long as you could make 3 barrels, and you could compare the thing properly scientifically. And what we did was we invented a series of parcels instead of any kind of pyramid or any kind of sensible commercial operation. Can I tell one quick anecdote? That I think we're all wine people here, so we'll probably understand this. We spent years finding parcels, dividing parcels, figuring how this worked, that worked, what varieties worked. And one day I had lunch, and I guess I arrived later, so everyone finished lunch and started back to work. And I'm still there. And someone's coming along, we say breaking the camion, which would be like the column of the vines. I don't want to start any controversy here, but there's places that, like Jumilla, very close to the coast, we till. We can talk about this later if you wish. And when you till, you pull the soil from the vines, and then you have to break this column. And this fellow's coming along, and he's almost at the end of the row, and then he turns around and goes back. And I'm I suppose the comparatively fastidious gringo, and he comes along the next time, and he doesn't come quite so far, and he turns around and goes back. Until the point where I said, I don't understand, Jose, what's the problem with here? And of course he smiled and said, no, it starts to get heavier there. If I wait a few days, then it's much less work. This is very flacucento, we would say, very lightweight man doing what would be potentially heavy work with a hoe if you weren't prepared. But what he was doing was drawing a line between 2 wines that we make from that property. That we'd spent 6 or 7 years analyzing when the leaves change, when that happens. We'd had soil pits dug, and he showed us the line. And all we would have, in theory, had to do, I think you all get where this story's going, is slow down a little bit, observe a little bit, and appreciate what kind of legacy is there before. And you have to kind of be inspired in how do you work with that legacy? You know, because in the end, that's how you get people to work in a way that, translating back, would be the discretionary effort that's really hard to define, but in the end appears in the glass. And people say, well, how did you do that? Well, you get 12 people rowing as a wonderful team, and that happens uncannily. Right?
Viviana, your experience has been a little different in that you were trained and worked alongside a professional viticultural team, Simonit and Cirque, who have been leaders in reframing the convention of pruning, essentially soft pruning with older vines. So you actually worked, if you like, with sympathetic old viners, but who had come through that more sort of structured school. How do you relate that experience to then how you manage your team and the viticultural workers who actually do the work with you in Basilisco?
Thank you, Sarah, for the question. I have so many things to say after what I've been listening, so I really hope I can express all my feelings, my ideas. This specific point to me is very important because I think it's all connected with the relationship between the people living on a place and the place, and we are seeing a sort of a missing of identity in the people. Like I think not only just the worker in the vineyards, like collectively we have this loss of identity and simultaneously a detachment from the land, the tradition, the nature we have. So basically what we're doing, as Sarah mentioned, I am a previous teacher. So actually I believe that through teaching, through knowledge, you reconnect people with their property, their land, their identity. The fact that I've been trained by this professional team, especially for pruning, gave me the tools to communicate on a level. But basically what they actually did, they didn't invent new method. They sort of reordinate, re-give a sense in the way you can teach and explain process, and is what I've been absorbing and transmitting. I have a lot of workers. Unfortunately, one of the big problems in our region is that we have a lack of young people. They escape from Basilicata. And so there is a mutual relationship between giving professionality and giving an option to stay. So teaching to the people how to do something and why they do this way. So not just telling them we prune this way, but just telling them how the physiology of the vine works. They understand what they do. They take pleasure in what they do. They take pleasure in the result, and they feel, we used the word before, participation. They feel part of what we do. And I think it's very important, because if we don't rebuild this connection between the people and the land, which was not just the, we use a stupid word, which is slavery, but people used to be slave of the work. They would just do. They would do the tomato, they would do the flowers, they would do what has to be done because they work for the day. And to see that now they work also, obviously they do work for the day and for the money, but to see they also work for the pleasure of changing, improving, preserving, and believing in what they're doing is a great result. And I think is extremely important for the old vine in particular, since they are so much, in our case, Basilicata is a small lost region. So in our case, it is at the moment not rewarding to work with old vines. It's a great privilege and is a great honor to transfer this feeling to the people that owns the land, like not our land, but is from the place. But at the same time, is a great effort. And I think for old vine, the more people feel part of this game and connected to what we do, the most is important what we can transfer.
And do you think we could make a better connection between a sort of technical agronomist training and then this really applied, often generational, empirical wisdom? And if so, how should we go about it? How would you go about it?
When we started the school, someone said to me, how much money do you have? Or how do you do it? Well, we started very simply. We started sitting on bales of straw, and there was 8 people the first year. And we just got industry experts. I got an expert on pruning, an expert on disease control, an expert on biodynamic farming, an expert on contour design, that was me, and an expert on how to manage a team, an expert on the legal qualifications together. And we started teaching. We don't have a school, we don't have a building, we don't have books. It's just what we know. It's just the knowledge in my head that we transfer to the people in the land. So just 2 interesting things. Madame Catena, she mentioned the word assassination. It made me think of my vineyards. And when we were pruning this year, one of the youngest people, he's a Rastafarian, he came running to me and he said to me, he's very upset. I said to him, so why are you so upset? He said to me, they prune so badly, they attacked the vineyards. Look at the vineyards. People that work in vines love old vines because they understand it. Secondly, I can mention to you that there was a study being done by Dr. Paul Nugent from the University of Edinburgh. After we started our pruning schools, we have 2 schools. It's a pruning school that's been going now for 14 years, that we teach people how to prune old vines. There's about 40, 50 people in the class, and we do, I tell them about vineyards of the world. I show them pictures. I'm going to show them pictures of the Bolivia and those lovely vines in Barolo as well this year. So I open their minds that their work is not only about what they do in South Africa and their little vineyards in Swartland. There's a whole world out there. And he did the research afterwards, Dr. Paul Nugent, and he found that they loved it. They loved the schools. people come up to me in the streets and the towns and say, can we please do your school? So there's such a need for knowledge transfer. There is such a need for that in the countries where families are not used like on your place. He also found that there's they get promoted. I can't tell the people that we will pay them more money. It's not about the money in essence. It's about the pride in what they do. To be noticed, do you know, we don't do wine tastings because of the history of South Africa. But I tell them that what they do in the vineyards actually has an impact on the quality of the wine. If you do a bad job this year, the wine would be terrible. And they understand that now. So much so that if I prune a vineyard, and I teach a lot. So if I get the team together and I say to them, we're going to prune this year like this, they will now start being cheeky with me. They will say no. But I'm talking about people on a very low educational level, not a low intellectual level. They've just never had the opportunity to learn. There's not a single place in South Africa where previously disadvantaged people can go and learn about viticulture. Not a single place. All the schools were closed down years ago already. So they would come to me and say, but you can't prune like this, because 5 years ago you told us to prune like that, and you came back and you said, no, the wine wasn't good. So we should make, they got interested and they remember what you tell them. And I think that is just wonderful. Just for one of the previous speakers, I do not want robots and drones and machines in my vineyards. Thank you so much. I want people in the vineyard. I want to build the power of the people that work the land.
And the history of South Africa you referred to was the history of paying pretty much indentured labour in alcohol, yeah?
Yeah, but we don't like to talk about that, Sarah.
No, sorry. But,
that's a bad history.
No,
and
but
it stopped years ago.
But that's what you mean by why you wouldn't go there.
And we're sitting with the result of that,
Yeah.
of course, today, which is a huge problem.
Yeah.
But we're trying to fix it.
Yes.
We also have a second school. It's a 5-day school. It's not a fancy school. It's just teaching, where we teach them a little bit about everything. And we started with 8 people. Now we train 200 people a year, 200 people annually, and we would really like to make that bigger in future.
So, yeah. Yes, please do it. So, from South Africa, then back to Italy. So, South Africa, you're working from a context of real deprivation and kind of scarring socially. In Italy, it's a different context. And Viviana, in your context, you're actually working within a larger company. And I actually think it's very important to highlight big companies doing good work, because we're a full ecosystem. We need larger businesses. I mean, Stuart was mentioning we've got the 70 to 80% of the big companies responsible for the market in California. You know, even if you manage to get a third of them really engaged and understanding not just the ethical kind of duty, but also actually the win-win commercials, it could be transformative. Anyway, I'm sorry. This is the longest question ever.
I'm trying to stay focused.
So you're part of the entity which is owned by Fiori di San Gregorio, which is a B Corp, and there are social pillars in the B Corp, which mean you need to treat your workers in a certain way. Do you want to? Can you take us through that?
Yeah, is a certification actually is a proper certification which has been going on for a few years to get to the point, and involves many aspects of the B stands for benefits, with meaning the relationship between the winery and her word, which is not only the worker. Principally, obviously, the worker, they are treated, trained, not only the wage, but the way they perceive their work, the respect they receive, the participation they can have is one of the elements we actually value if we feel part of what we're doing. And but also together with this, the benefits has to be applied to our how do you say, furniture is for the people that provide us tools, materials, and
Suppliers.
suppliers, and our clients at the same time. And most important, my point of view, to the people that provides grape, because we are the small winery in Basilicata, but Feudi is bigger, is in Campania, and they also have many grape providers. And they actually make a contract to guarantee the quality and guarantee to the people the possibility not to pull out the vineyards, because it's very frequent in south of Italy, because it's very expensive. In the last few years in particular, not much rewarding, less and less grape. So all this constellation of micro elements together with the bean, the water saving and the electricity coming only from renewable energy are part of the B idea, the benefits. It's basically, it's been changed the statuto. The
statute.
Yeah, the statute of the winery, and it's been changed in order to include the fact that the winery will give a better impact rather than benefit for the winery. So that is one of the pillars of what Feudi is trying to do in this territory. It started a long time ago, at least 20 years ago, just basically with the idea of contract for the grape producer. Because very often, I think everywhere, especially in the Puglia region, there is a battle for the lower price. And from the farmer's point of view, there is the battle for the bigger yield. So to find quality and healthier life for everybody, that has been already established many years ago. And then this process continued, obviously, inside the winery as well. And it took Antonio, the owner, Antonio Capaldo, to the idea of perceiving this idea of a benefit winery, a benefit enterprise that can be a good thing for the territory in the largest extended way.
And do you find that there's good recognition of what B Corp means? I noted that Italian wineries comprise 30% of all the B Corp wineries registered in the world. Mm-hmm. Do you find that there's good awareness of what B Corp is? Is it something that comes up in your discussions with potential importers? I know, but is it something that's familiar?
I think it will.
Yeah.
At the moment, it's like all the process in wine, but many other enterprises probably, all the processes are very slow. Mm-hmm. You start a lot of work and then slowly you see it and slowly it gets to a result. So I strongly believe it, that you will take to something, and the fact that many are joining this movement, it would have an effect. At the moment, I don't have elements to say that it actually has an impact on the number of bottle or the average price. But I definitely think that it has an impact on the perception of what is the role of a winery. Because first of all, we always claim that we are the guardian of the territory, the guardian of the landscape, but landscape include people, include lives, include the way we live. So somehow it extends as a model the idea of what our presence should mean in a territory.
It's almost like a modern resetting of the old landowner model, mm-hmm. but semi-feudal, where a good landowner would take on almost paternalistic mm-hmm. responsibility for their tenants, and would, I've set up a school, or I've made sure that they get, somewhere to wash, or it's like because lots of wine, lots of the most famous wines come from a place of aristocratic privilege. Barolo's famous because it was the wine of kings and princes. Champagne was the ultimate celebrity influencer kind of brand, and I think we are at this real point of resetting for wine. And if you sort out this sort of foundation of the way you really relate to the labour, in a sense, labour is where all culture begins. Because it's where we build civilizations. Anyway, sorry, that's not a question. And Derek, I wanted to come to you. Thank you for that. I wanted to come to you because you have been, very open about some of your frustrations with the market economic. Don't worry. Everyone knows with the market economics, and echoing what Stuart Spencer was saying earlier, that we have this we have a big market, we have powerful producers, powerful wineries, but actually that they were kind of almost keeping themselves in a kind of prison of a race to the bottom by the way in which they were pricing grapes. And I wanted to ask how you went about kind of reframing that when you set up the VIGNO collective, in which you engaged, I think, is it 10 companies in VIGNO?
15 today.
15, including some larger companies, in which you kind of basically agreed a fellowship of producing high-quality old vine Carignan. How did you go about bringing that together and getting this shared value of, let's recognize the value of these old vineyards and actually valorize them?
I was going to go a different direction than the collective, but we can do that. You start to realize that there's more to do. No? Like we're in a very small, very, very small scale, and certain things start to work. I don't really complain about conditions. I don't have the right to complain. After a very big earthquake in 2010 and the Jeffrey Roberts Award with Gensis, I convinced an English importer to buy wine en primeur with something that was really untried, the idea there was potential in Carignana. But they bought a lot of pallets of wine, which were more or less, we were given, when it's produced, you send it to us, and I should mention, bibendum. There was a tremendous thing at that time that gave us the opportunity to work with 3 small families. We did some grafting, but it was like a means of lifting a common spirit at a very bad time. We did something after the fires and something during COVID. So we got all the 4 elements in there. But it's always been something to come back from. And I think there was a certain spilling over where there was more to do, and it was winemakers' lunches, really, that got VIGNO started. Because the winemakers, to me, have a tremendous role. They have a direct line to the owner, and you don't necessarily have to. You mentioned large companies. You didn't have to convince the powers that be in the company. The owner and his winemaker, they walk vineyards, they do things, a proper winery, I would say. And that gave us impetus to set up a set of rules. It's like a voluntary DOC with kind of all the good parts of DOC without, we don't really have proper DOC in Chile, so without the problems. But that's been tremendously powerful in the reception of Carignan in the world, in the reception of collectively working together, because the means of sharing amongst viticulturists, etc., is so different than when all the wineries go to a fair and the commercial people compete with each other for attention. It's been a real eye-opener.
It's a different culture of openness you find with viticulturists.
Because we have vineyard visits. We had a vineyard visit where I was trying to show the rest what you do when you're on a small scale. Remember, we have no phylloxera, so we layer vineyards. So I had a piece of a vineyard that's oriented so that the water runs off, and we have to repair the road every year, and it slowly starts to dry up. So we reoriented it with you grab a horse's bridle, and we made it a sense of key line to see what the difference would be in that vineyard over 2 or 3 years. Well, of course, I don't know how you apply that to a big scale, but it certainly made people scratch their heads, and the whole idea of any kind of, I don't want to compare keyline to regenerative, but if it's a piece, they're all different pieces of the same puzzle, no? But there really is a sharing between large and small that they completely understand that. Otherwise, I don't think we wouldn't have had that exposure. Yeah.
Do you want to say something? Yes. I can tell.
Sarah, you're very intuitive.
I want to correct you on the word paternalistic. I don't want to have a paternalistic system. I want to treat the labor as my equals.
No. I wasn't saying I said the old way was paternalistic. Yes. The land management used to be paternalistic.
Yes. I want to give them skills that sought after. I want to build teams that are so excellent that people look for them. The problem with contract labor and migrant labor, as we all know, is You bring the army in, they do work for a month of the year or 2 months of the year, and then you leave, they're like faceless people. Then they go again. But what about their children? Who puts food on the table in the other 12 months, the other 10 months? So if you can do your work in such a way that you can employ them for 10 or 11 months of the year, you sustain families. You keep people and children in food and in housing. And that's what we're after. It's the longevity of our labor force, but also giving a pride and a sense of dignity.
And there are benefits from that come along the way. Christian Cancino is our head pruner. And if there's any discussion, which there is, because science meets tradition, however you want to say it, in a vineyard, I have never met anyone in my life that can prune something, and he will do 3 plants the way you say, and 3 plants the way I say, and then 8 months later, or whatever, in harvest, remember the discussion we had, and he knows right where they are, and he doesn't necessarily win all the arguments, but you go back and forth. They're not arguments. But I've never worked with any professional from outside, from any university, who could do that.
Exactly.
And that was something that he learned from his father. That's how you do it. His father was one of those people who didn't have names for all the vines, but was very familiar with his vineyards. And that is, how do you say, that's impagable. That's, you can't pay for that in
It's impressive.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful, and you realize his heart is in it. Now, that same person can be very obstinate and really not appreciate guests who come from the other side of the world and say, no, that's not how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to do that this way. And there's a reason they say they want to do it another way, but in most places there are fundamental differences that one has to respect. We receive WOOFER, as we say, which stands for Volunteers on Organic Farms. I'm not sure what the WOOF stands for. But that's fantastic. You just a Norwegian and a couple of Swedes, and you put them in the mix. And in the first years, you kind of thought, I'm not sure what these people are going to, what language they're going to speak in or anything. But in the end, that's a wonderful mix. And they take experiences home. And of course, the value for the people on the team, that's, again, impagable, sorry, but that's priceless.
World.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So what you've all described is it's a type of highly applied, intuitive and skilled craft in the way that people talk about a great tailor or a great baker or a chef or anyone who's working with their hands, where you have aesthetic form and technical understanding. But it was interesting to me that you were really resistant to the idea of any technology in the vineyards because, let me look at, oh my God, eyebrows, so terrifying. Because actually we do live in an ecosystem of wine. We can't have an industry that is only, small batch, high craft, expensive old vine wine. Is there not an argument that actually if we have a kind of more efficient, intentional use of technology and intelligent mechanization, and then you actually say, but these are the craft vineyards. This is where I remember Capaldo told me, and when I went to see your vineyards in Campania, I said, how do you find the people who work on these? And he said, they have to be from generational farmers. And he said, you see that when they come up to the vine, they'll often lean in, just for a second, they'll lean into it. They'll almost give it a little cuddle. They'll touch it before they work out what they're doing. And he said they're feeling the vigor. They're seeing, how's that vine feeling today? And that kind of skill, he said, it's craft mixed with actual inspiration. So, what do you think about trying to reframe this as almost this is craft viticulture that is done by hand versus more, if you like, technological viticulture? Just as we have that parallel in a lot of products in a lot of industries. Would you be open to that? Do you think that's a good idea?
Of course it's a good idea.
Excellent.
Thank you, Sarah.
Right, thank you so much. We finished.
We use a lot of technology in the design of new vineyards. As you could see from the previous discussion, with the contour design, I mean, that's highly technological. We use GIS, satellite studies, we use soil science, we use all sorts of fancy bloody things. But when it comes to the viticulture itself, the working of the vines, that needs a trained hand.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So we have time for questions. Any questions? Oh, come on. No?
A single one.
Not a single one. Yes. Oh, do you have a question? Oh, it's just coming. Sorry. Mike's coming.
I love this panel very much, talking about what it takes to actually grow wine. None of you are facing quite the political situation that we are here in California. I'm just wondering if you have any insight or advice about how to be both respectful to the people that are our partners in this venture, as well as, kind of protecting and ensuring that we have a future as well with a good workforce that really understands what they're doing. I mean, the California workforce in wine is kind of unprecedented in the world in terms of legacy and involvement.
When you say political situation, what are the
anti-immigrant
right.
fear that is happening all over the U.S. and especially in California, which is apparently an enemy of the state right now.
First of all, I'm so sorry that you're going through that. This is an incredible state. It's an incredible country. We're having a similar thing in farming in the UK, actually, which has actually opened up farming to really awful indenture gangs who are bringing over people who are much more vulnerable than the previous workers. Is this the kind of thing that's happening, or is it happening for you as like a labour shortage? Yeah. Sorry. Could you give the microphone to the lady? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Legacy. Yeah.
Well, I grew up in California, but I live in Oregon now. Same thing. The problem we have is no young people in America want to work in a vineyard. And that will only get worse. It'll get worse because college-educated students want to earn six figures, and they're not going to do that. And we have to figure out a way to create that pipeline. And I don't know how that's going to come about.
I do think, that the situation with vineyards losing workers from one day to the next because they've been arrested and taken away is a uniquely US situation at the moment. However, I work in France. Getting young people to work in a vineyard in France is now very, very difficult because the money that we're getting for the wine that we're producing, we're getting essentially, whether you look at whether it's wine sold in the bulk market or wine sold by the bottle, if you're only getting 1, 2, 2.5 euros per bottle in the market, which is what we are, a lot less than is the case in the US generally, it is very hard to be able to pay vineyard workers as much as they could earn in other spheres. And that is a problem, even in Georgia and Eastern Europe, where I might have thought it was easier. Even there, getting workers to come and to prune and to pick grapes is a problem.
Please, can I say something? It's actually not, it is a problem worldwide, I know that, but it's actually quite a simple answer. If you train people and give them skills, and they can earn more because they do a better job, they can provide better for their children, they'll have a better standing in their community, and younger people will stay in the land. It's as easy as that. Pay them a decent wage because they do a better job, because they've been trained, and people will stay on the land. They will not move away. But I would just like to finish off with a lovely quote from Mr. Derek here next to me. He said, in a times of social distancing, which we all have, get closer. Get closer. That's just so lovely. Get closer to the people. Get the people closer to you. Let's just build a community of care.
I like to think there is a space between $1, $2 bottle of wine. This isn't going to happen. But I think there is a space where people would pay something for something without it becoming, without us jumping to luxury. But that's me responding to a Chilean wine business that in my whole time involved, it's always been about fill the supermarket and make money and then have the most expensive bottle of any of the neighbors in the valley. I'm being cruel, but I'm not really that far from the truth. It's always icons, is that one word or two, and there's something. And in the end, if you taste the wine, if you ever have the chance to taste properly the wines in Chile, they knock it out of the park between about $20 and $45, right where no one's interested in working. So that's when the movement of independent vintners, el Movimiento Viñeteros Independientes, came along. That was their mark. And in Brazil, if a wine's from Chile, they ask if it is a Movi wine or not. And I think other people could do that in this world. Movi did it by the seat of their pants. We never had any money. We never had anything. It was a question of, it was a buyer's group because they wouldn't answer our mails because we were asking for so few bottles, labels, whatever it was. We weren't customers of theirs. And together, I don't know, we were 110,000 bottles of wine in the beginning, so they'd answer your email. I think there is a space in between there that I would like to think could work.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for your very candid responses. It's not easy, but it is, I think it's worth fighting for, and we do have examples on our panel of people who have, in their terroir, in their circumstances, achieved success. And I just want to thank you all for your work and for sharing your experience with us. So thank you so much.